Hello, this is Jackrabbit Journal. Hank McCall, Tom Nieman running down South Dakota State University football as we get the season going. The Jackrabbits started on Saturday as they take on mighty Missouri out of the Southeast Conference to open the season. A little bit of a test to get going.
A slight test against a formidable SEC opponent, the first since the move to Division I. A great opportunity for the Jackrabbits to really get an idea as to just where they're at as a football team. As we're early on here in the 2014 season, it's certainly a process to figure out who you are. But you might as well go out there with one of the toughest teams in the country and get after it.
All right, and get paid. More on Missouri coming up a little later. We'll also run through the probable starting lineups, both offensively and defensively for the Jacks going into that Missouri game. But first, let us take a peek back at last season. It was a good one. The Jacks won 9 games in a row for the second season in a row. They qualify for the playoffs for the second season in a row. And here's how they got it done. They opened 2013 with 3 straight wins over Butler, North Dakota, and Southeastern Louisiana. Zach Zenner tied his own school record in that North Dakota game with 295 yards rushing, and then he followed up 2 weeks later with 202 on the ground at Nebraska.
Zach was certainly ready to go the first part of the season. Had some ups and downs defensively, still trying to figure some things out. Ended up losing that Nebraska game 59-20 on their way to a 3-3 record at that particular point in time. But some good things, but certainly plenty of things for them to work on during the season.
Got to 3-3. They were 4-4 after that lopsided loss at Missouri State, where the Jackrabbit D allowed 352 yards rushing that afternoon. And at that point, any thought of the playoffs seemed a little bit far-fetched, but they reel off 4 wins in a row, starting with that one that they somehow pulled out at home against Northern Iowa.
Which was a heck of a game, a thriller double overtime game, coming off after hitting rock bottom at Missouri State. That was a horrific performance by the Jackrabbit defense, but an opportunity for them to wake up and say, hey, where is this season going to go? Are we going to move forward? Are we going to move backward? And 4 straight wins, pretty obvious which way they chose to go.
Beat Indiana State the week after that, the only shutout of the season for the defense, as they won that one 29-0 at South Dakota in a game that the Coyotes were rough and ready and riled up for, but Winston Wright takes that touchdown back, 80 yards for a touchdown to seal it late in the game.
Big play for the Jackrabbits. Winston Wright, the senior, coming up big for the Jackrabbits, which is exactly what needed to happen and is exactly what's going to need to happen this season in order for the Jacks to make a splash in the Missouri Valley.
All right, and then finished it up at Youngstown State. Beat the Penguins again. Zenner goes for 198 and 2 touchdowns in that game at Youngstown State. And both teams after that game, they were both 8-4, but the Jackrabbits get the playoff bid. Only North Dakota State and South Dakota State out of the Missouri Valley made the playoffs last year, which was a little ridiculous. We've been through this before.
We certainly have. We've covered it well here on this very show. A lot of controversy there, but the bottom line was the Jackrabbits were the ones that got it done that last portion of the season, that last third of the season really is where they showed that they were a playoff caliber team, and that's why they got the nod over the UNIs and the Youngstown States in the Valley.
All right, Jacks traveled to Flagstaff, Arizona in the first round of the FCS playoffs. They beat Northern Arizona 26-7, and Zenner with another outstanding game in this one.
He did it again. The man was on fire. They gave him the ball plenty of times, but 249 yards, I think, is what he went for in that game. Just a tremendous output from the leader of your football team. Big time stage, big time opportunity for him to show what he's all about.
Defense only gave up 53 yards rushing in that one as they beat Northern Arizona, but the season ended the next week as SDSU took on Eastern Washington on that goofy red turf in Cheney, Washington. It was tied 14-14 at halftime and then got away from the Jacks in the second half.
They certainly gave it a go, but it appears as if they got a bit run down by the Eastern Washington offense, led by their All-American quarterback. We had a chance to see just this past week start the season off on ESPN. Tremendous football player out that way, but certainly a learning experience. Another great run for the Jackrabbits, but it's something that they certainly want to improve upon.
Vernon Adams at Eastern Washington had 5 touchdown passes in that game against South Dakota State, and Eastern Washington #1 in the preseason ahead of North Dakota State, and they just thumped Sam Houston State, another very good FCS team, in that opener last week, 56-35. So Eastern Washington going to be one to reckon with again. But the Jackrabbits will run through this year's schedule a little bit later. Hank will point out some of the rough spots and tell us how the Jackrabbits can go even further into the playoffs this year. When we come back, though, the combination of Austin Sumner, Zach Zenner, and Jason Schneider put up some of the best numbers ever by a Jackrabbit trio last year, and they are all back this year to try and do it again. We will run down the Rabbit offense after this.
Jackrabbit Journal on Midco Sports Network is presented by Billionato.com.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at the Jackrabbit offense, and let's take a look at these numbers first, Hank. Go back over the last 29 years. These are some of the most productive Jackrabbit combinations of quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. Sumner, Zenner, and Schneider, more than 6,000 yards and 52 touchdowns last year. Only those guys from back in your era in 2008 put it in the end zone more often than the Jacks did last year.
Yeah, well, certainly some impressive numbers that we see here on the board. My boy Ryan Berry back in 2008, he was slinging it. Kyle and Jerron, they were making plays. But the big thing for the trio that you're staring at right here in Austin Sumner, Zach Zenner, and Jason Schneider is for 2014. Now, these guys are seniors. Last year when they did this, they were juniors. They were the guy in the offense. They were the guys in the offensive side of the ball, but in the locker room, they were still a group of seniors, of leaders that the rest of the team looked to. Now that they are the guys, the upperclassmen, the leaders, the captains of this football team, there's some additional pressure that comes along with all of that. Knowing that this is your last opportunity to make a difference for this program and that all these guys are looking to you, there's a little more to it. So now, how do they find a way to either duplicate those numbers or improve upon them in 2014?
All right, it is a great group, as you say, but obviously the skill guys are going to need a lot of help from the fat guys to get it done again this year.
We've never had this amount of accomplished skill coming back with Sumner, Zenner, and Schneider, and Cam Jones and the other tight ends behind him, Trevor Wesley. It's a great core, but I remind everybody, I remind myself, both offense and defense starts with the fat guys, starts with the lines, and those are the guys that will determine how good the skill guys are.
All right, that gets us to the offensive line, and Stig says there's a lot of good players there that just haven't had a lot of experience. It's something you can't create in practice. Going to take some games for these guys to get going. But there are two guys back that started that last game of the year at Eastern Washington. Trevor Greger at right tackle and Nick Purcell at right guard. Purcell, a Rapid City, South Dakota kid, started the last 3 games after Andrew Mueller got hurt last year. But just watching him practice, I'm looking at the depth chart, and it looks like the right side is going to be Greger at right tackle with the combination of Mueller and Purcell at guard. Jacob Onasorgi, a redshirt freshman, is penciled in at center right now, and then the left side looks to be a combo of Dylan Sider and Bryce Seiverling, who are both juniors, and Taylor Bloom, a junior from Madison, South Dakota. But it's always piecing together a little bit on the offensive line, isn't it? No matter who you got.
Well, it is, and what it really is, it's always piecing together a team every single year in college football. It's the great thing about college football. Every year is a new opportunity to establish an identity, to become the team that you always wanted to be, that you always wanted as a program. And so this is case in point right here with these big guys. The skill positions are set on the offensive side of the ball for the most part. The question mark is the big boys up front. So what's it going to come down to? It's going to come down to young guys, talented guys stepping up and doing their job on a consistent basis for the football team in order for them to be successful. And that's college football every single year. You got holes to fill. You either fill them or you don't.
All right, the O-line blocking for maybe the best back in the FCS over the last couple of years. Last year, there were 6 200-yard rushing games in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. Zach Zenner had 3 of those 6. He had 3 of the top 4 rushing performances last year in the Missouri Valley. And it's amazing how he holds up physically, takes a beating, but he's got a little nimble style of running, doesn't he? He's not really a slasher where he kind of breaks down and explodes side to side. He just kind of, it's almost like he tiptoes through there, isn't it?
He's deceptively agile. You know, a lot of folks, you see his big runs, it's one cut and it's downhill. But there are little nuances to the way that he carries the football that prevent him from taking a lot of big shots. Yeah. He takes his shots with all the carries that he gets, but he's able to sidestep a lot of that stuff and then find a way to get up the field. It's been fun to watch him the last 3 years, and I think that regardless of what's going on up front with the big guys, he's poised with the way that he takes care of himself, the approach that he has to the game, which has been evidenced over the last couple of years. I think he's going to have another big year for the Jacks.
All right, here's how Zenner kind of explains how he gets it done.
I'm trying to make cuts, but trying to make them full speed. You know, you don't want to break down. You're trying to make the defense break down, and then you're going to cut and get around them. So I guess that's the goal, and pace to the line of scrimmage and then explode through. Like pace to and explode through it.
All right, pace to the line and explode through the line, the words that Zenner has lived by the last couple of years. Do you think he will go for 2,000 again this year?
Well, pace two and then explode through. It's a simple concept, but it's not easy to do. Neither is running for 2,000 yards in any given season, let alone back-to-back season, let alone 3 straight seasons. Do I think that he will do it again? I don't know. Do I think he can? Absolutely, because of how talented this young man is and what he's been able to do over the last 2 years, despite not having an offensive line that was just completely intact. Like he will this year. You know, it's a process. Establishing a football team, establishing a run game is a process that carries on throughout the entire season. I do think Zach will run for another 2,000 yards just because of how great he is. And I think the guys up front are obviously going to be a big piece of that, and he'll be the first one to tell you that they're the reason he's able to do it.
All right, he ended up with 2,015 yards last year, and that included 4 yards in the game against North Dakota State total. He had 8 rushes for 4 yards and ended up with 2,015. That game cost him getting the SDSU single season record, but Zenner needs 218 yards this year to set a new Missouri Valley Conference record for career rushing, and we're pretty sure he's going to get that done. One last note, the SDSU offense is going to use a true fullback this year. Pretty much the same thing as a tight end working as a blocker like they used last year, just that the fullbacks are being coached as fullbacks this year, working out with the offensive backfield, not as tight ends that are just kind of moonlighting as blocking fullbacks. So is this a big change?
A big change. I think it's a good change for the guys who are going to be fullbacks, in that every day that they're at practice, they're not with the tight ends. They're not out there catching as many balls and fine-tuning as many routes that they quite simply weren't running. You know, between Cam Jones and a couple other guys who were their route-running tight ends, yeah, they need to be working on that stuff. But the boys who are just, going up there and cracking heads every single down that they're on the field, that's what they need to be focused on day in and day out.
All right, they got Chad Strelo slotted in as that starting fullback this year, so another enhancement to the running game we hope for the Jackrabbits this year. All right, we will do the defense next when we come back on Jackrabbit Journal.
Jackrabbit Journal on Midco Sports Network is presented by BillionAuto.com.
Welcome back. Getting ready for the Jackrabbit football opener at Missouri this Saturday. Let's get to the SDSU defense now. And 6 of the top 8 tacklers from last year are gone. Kilgore and Pete and Douglas and Pugh and Winston Wright are all done. Charles Elmore, one of the linebackers, is out for the season with an injury. This is a big deal, I think.
It certainly is. He's one of their top playmakers, would have been one of the top playmakers on that squad. For 2014, he's gone. And so we've got to move past that, just as the Jackrabbits have. They're planning to move on without him. And so who's it going to be that's going to step up? Obviously, TJ Lally, we'll talk about him in a minute, of the linebacking core. But certainly questions in the back, in the defensive backfield, questions up front. This is the unit that isn't returning 3 first-team all-conference football players and needs the most attention for sure.
All right, TJ Lally, as you mentioned, at linebacker, is back, and that is a good thing.
I still feel somewhat young, but now I'm going into my 4th season, and so which is good. It's especially with a team that's pretty young this year, a lot of guys that are stepping into new spots, and it's nice to be able to really know what's going on and be able to help them with the transitions.
So obviously Lally is the guy, the leader of this linebacking core and the leader of this defense. But so now who's going to step up out of these young linebackers? And guys like Jesse Bobbitt, Tom Pites, Dallas Brown, all of whom got valuable reps last season. But now, hey, young guy, you're not the young guy anymore. You're the guy. So it's time to step up, make some plays for your teammates, otherwise get your tail back on the pond.
All right. Coach Stig's always talking about defensive guys fitting plays. He'll talk about it all year, reading the play and then being able to react and physically make the play. And he's got a pretty good analogy for this.
I'm an old math teacher, and football is a flashcard. When you see something, you need to know the right answer, and that's no more appropriate than on defense. When you see something flash, you have to fit the play, and we've got a ways to go there. You can see the heads on the swivel. You can see slow movement sometimes, but again, that's the maturity part of playing defense.
All right, so you have to have guys that can not only read the flashcard and know the answer, but then physically make the stop. You got to have both parts of that equation, right?
Read slow, react fast.
That's what it comes down to defensively. Jerian Butler is one of those guys that can read and react as he goes into his junior year this year, and the coaches think that the Jackrabbits secondary is going to be really good.
I kind of feel like our strength right now is the secondary. I know we lost Winston, but I feel like we have more guys, we have more depth there now, as opposed to Winston and Jerian and Jimmy, and then maybe who's going to go in next, and Jake and Melvin and Nick Mears and Nick Farina, who's been hurt. We got four safeties that we can roll in and play. So I feel really good about that. We just need to continue to get better up front and in the linebacker spot.
All right, Coach, talking about Jimmy Forsyth at the corner along with Jerian Butler, and then a couple of redshirt freshmen as backups at the corner right now. But Jake Gentili and Melvin Tavares, two seniors that are probably going to be in those starting safety spots. Nick Mears, you talked about him as a sophomore from Millbank and should get some time this year. But as Coach Brown said, the Jacks need some guys to develop on the defensive line most of all.
Certainly. We know Cole Langer is back. Missouri Valley all newcomer list last year, preseason all Valley this year. Not bad for a young man who he didn't play defensive line in high school, but now he's the guy and the leader of that unit as the lone guy coming back starter. And he looks impressive. I was at the spring game, and he's clearly put on some weight. He's a big, strong boy. Expect him to make an impact this year.
Comes in at about 285 pounds and, yes, never played defensive line when he was at Del Rapids High School.
It's been a big change because, I didn't play at all in high school. I was all linebacker and running back. But otherwise, I don't know, it's just a little different putting your hand on the ground. It's gotten easier and easier, and now I feel pretty comfortable with it.
Langer, Sherlock, LeBlance, the guys that are coming back, all had valuable reps last year. Langer's got to be the leader of this defensive line unit. Jack Sherlock certainly had some good playing time at linebacker, so still a transition for him now, new to the defensive line. But these guys have to take these young guys under the wing and show them how to get it done at this level.
All right, a couple other names on that D-line, Landon Schultz, Kevin Klasick in competition at the defensive end spot. And then Coach Brown says Shane Gottlob and Kellen Sulik, a couple of South Dakota kids, are showing improvement right now and could get some time on the D-line as well for the Jackrabbits. All right, up next, we'll go through the schedule. We'll play they'll win that one, they'll lose that one game, and see if you and Hank agree when we come back.
Jackrabbit Journal on Midco Sports Network is presented by Billionauto.com.
South Dakota State is picked to finish second in the Missouri Valley Football Conference this year. The Jackrabbits are rated number 10 in the National FCS poll, and 12 games on the schedule this year. Hank, let's take a look at the first four here, the non-conference games to get going.
Let's do that. Starting things off August 30th at Missouri. The Tigers rolling into town. Hey, Tigers, a lot up in the air down in Missouri. They're not sure what they're going to have. SEC program, of course. Plenty of athletes down there. Jackrabbits will get a good idea as to where they're at to kick off the season, and we'll certainly get a paycheck. Cal Poly the next week at home at Coughlin Alumni Stadium. The next week after that at Southern Utah. Those 2 weeks, those are two FCS opponents with good history and good programs. Those no cupcakes in those 2 weeks. Then Wisconsin-Oshkosh at home, which is what it is. It's a tune-up game before Missouri Valley Conference play begins.
All right, the fifth week is the off week this year, and then they do start Valley play on October 4th against Illinois State.
At Illinois State. One thing we all know about the Missouri Valley Conference, there's not an off week. You look down this line, every one of these teams that the Jackrabbits will play are potentially a good football team. After Illinois State, Missouri State at home on Midco Sports Net. You'll be able to catch Tom and I calling that one. At Northern Iowa, who I think is one of the front runners to win the conference this year, along with the Jacks and the Bison. And then Youngstown State on Hobo Day at Coughlin Alumni Stadium before the Jacks head up to North Dakota State in the border rivalry.
Bison have beaten the Jacks 5 in a row. Got to do something there. And then 2 of the last 3 at home, finishing up with the Coyotes.
Yeah, nice way to finish up the season. At Indiana State, Western Illinois coming to town, and then the Yotes, of course, to finish things out on Midco Sports Net again with yours truly, Mr. Nieman.
All right, I got them at 10-2. Could be 6-6. We'll see.
I like the 10-2 number.
How it works out. The FCS playoffs would get started after that USD game. The goal is to be one of the top 8 seeds in that 24-team field this year, and then see what happens. All right, more on Missouri when we come back. Words from Stig and Zenner and Lally on taking on the Tigers this weekend.
Jackrabbit Journal on Midco Sports Network is presented by BillionAuto.com.
The Jackrabbits opened the season on Saturday at Missouri. The Tigers were 12-2 last year. They beat Florida, beat Georgia. They won the Cotton Bowl. They beat Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M last year. Why are we playing these guys?
That's really
Johnny.
the only reason. Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the dollars, man. There's a big check on the line for the Jackrabbits. They're going to take it and be able to fund this program and others along with it.
All right, here are some thoughts from the team and the coaches on, is this the best team that the Jackrabbits have ever played?
I think it's going to be our greatest challenge as a football program, not because of where we're at, but because of where they're at. We will go down there, take the field, and believe in ourselves, believe in the game plan. We'll believe in our players, and we just need to play error-free football and our best football and see what happens. I mean, I can't project how good they are, but I know how we're coming along.
You see a lot of difference in the size, I'd say, FCS to FBS. At least that's what I've noticed. So to go up against guys, that are maybe a little bit bigger, maybe just a little bit faster, sets you up for the rest of the season.
My first game ever was against Kansas, and that was a great kind of trial by fire because, if you can go out there and play well against a great team like that, you feel real confident going against any team in the nation.
All right, should point out that was the only game that Kansas won that year when they beat the Jackrabbits, but you get the point. Is this a good test, though, for the Jackrabbits?
It's tough to see the value in it for me, other than the dollars and the cents, and that's what it comes down to. Go down there, collect the check, and then get out of Dodge as healthy as possible.
All right, should be a good experience at least. Missouri maybe not as formidable as they were last year, but the game is at 2:30 on Saturday. It'll be televised on ESPNU, and we will see you next week on Jackrabbit Journal.